national responsibility that I welcome you all to the presidency this afternoon for the formal presentation of the National Economic Dialogue Final Report. This initiative, which was launched 3 months ago under the theme Resetting Ghana, Building the Economy We Want Together, was conceived as a call to action and a platform for consensus building, realism, and reform. This occasion is significant because it concludes a far-reaching national conversation on our economic future and begins a new phase of implementation rooted in our collective insight and our shared commitment. Let me begin by commending first the Planning Committee and also commending all stakeholders, public institutions, the private sector, trade unions, think tanks, civil society organizations, youth leaders, academia, and our international partners who participated in the dialogue process with candor, technical depth, and a sense of patriotism. Your contributions to the success of the dialogue have been invaluable. When we initiated this dialogue, we were under no illusion about the gravity of the economic crisis we had inherited. Record debt, runaway inflation, high unemployment, and a complete loss of confidence in the economy's governance. The dialogue was therefore not an academic exercise. It was a necessary intervention in order to achieve our agenda to reset. The final report presented today reflects a broad consensus on what needs to be done to stabilize our economy, restore investor confidence, and put our country on a path of inclusive and resilient growth. It offers practical homegrown policy solutions across 10 priority areas. And I want to share briefly how your government is already responding. And the first is restoring fiscal discipline. One of the dialogue's most precise conclusions is that we cannot rebuild confidence in our economy without restoring fiscal discipline and eliminating structural inefficiencies. We have therefore swiftly amended the Public Financial Management Act to introduce a binding debt ceiling aimed at reducing Ghana's debt to GDP ratio to no more than 45% by 2028. To support this, we are establishing an independent fiscal council by the third quarter of this year to provide professional, non-partisan oversight of the national budget and borrowing framework. This body will publish regular assessments to keep the government accountable to the people. The second is energy sector sustainability. The dialogue recognizes growing energy sector liabilities as the greatest existential threat to fiscal consolidation and macroeconomic stability. Our energy sector carries a debt burden of over $3.1 billion with an estimated $1.8 billion more required to finance fuel procurements for uninterrupted thermal power generation in the coming months. If left unaddressed, this situation significantly threatens national productivity and industrial growth. While we have devised a strategy to liquidate this debt and staunch the bleeding in the power sector, we must take advantage of recent gains created by appreciation in the value of our currency to accelerate the solution to our energy sector challenges. In line with the dialogue's recommendation to boldly tackle the crisis in the energy sector, Parliament yesterday approved an amendment to the Energy Sector Levies Act and a certificate of urgency, introducing a 1 Ghana cedi increase in the energy sector recovery levy. This decision, though difficult, is necessary and justifiable. The additional revenue projected is 5.7 billion cedis annually. This revenue will be strictly ring-fenced to pay down legacy energy debt, finance ongoing fuel purchase, and avert the risk of recurring power shortages. Funds from this levy will not be subject to the hazards of the Consolidated Fund. And the minister is here. I know when money falls into the Consolidated Fund, it faces certain hazards. It will not be subject to the hazards of the Consolidated Fund. The fund will be regularly audited and audit reports made public to ensure its transparent use. While initially much of this revenue will go into the purchase of fuel to ensure stable supply of electricity, with the ongoing developments in the upstream sector, we expect to receive more gas from our E&I Sankofa and Jubilee and 10 fields. With also the assurance of additional gas through the West African gas pipeline, we expect to substantially reduce the use of liquid fuels in our energy mix. At that stage, the resources generated by this increased levy will be channeled to pay down accumulated legacy debts in the power sector. With the recent gains in macro stability and strengthening of the Ghanaian cedi, this levy is not expected to result in any immediate fuel price increases at the pump. We are fully aware of the burden this will place on households and businesses, but I want to assure Ghanaians that this decision was not taken lightly. Furthermore, the government will continue working to reduce systemic inefficiencies in the energy procurement and distribution sectors, while enhancing targeted social interventions for vulnerable groups. Reforming the tax system for growth and fairness. Another central recommendation of the dialogue was to reform Ghana's overcomplicated distortionary tax regime, which has become both a disincentive to investment and a burden on the ordinary citizen. Accordingly, the government has moved to repeal 4 punitive and counterproductive taxes within the first 90 days of this administration. The electronic transfer levy, which was known as the e-levy tax, the emissions levy, and the betting tax. Additionally, we're undertaking a comprehensive rationalization of the VAT regime to remove cascading effects and restore predictability and fairness in VAT taxes. After stakeholder consultation and parliamentary review, these changes will take effect from September 2025. Our goal is to have a leaner, simpler, pro-business tax framework that supports growth and compliance. Reviving the productive economy. The dialogue reaffirmed that no nation has ever taxed or borrowed its way to prosperity. Therefore, we must refocus national development around production, exports, and value addition. To this end, we're rolling out our flagship 24-hour economy program, targeting agro-processing, logistics, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and public safety sectors. Firms operating in second or third shifts will benefit from fiscal incentives, utility discounts, and labor support schemes. This approach will help us expand job opportunities, reduce youth unemployment, and increase output with significant new capital outlay. We are repositioning the Ghana Export Promotion Authority to lead the implementation of a new accelerated export development strategy aimed at raising non-traditional exports to $10 billion by 2028. Export zones, port automation, and trade facilitation reforms are being aligned with this goal. Addressing structural constraints and labor market realities. Ladies and gentlemen, the dialogue made it clear that Ghana's crisis is not just fiscal, but also structural. We face a mismatch between our educational outcomes and our labor market needs, inefficiencies in public service delivery, and weak coordination between central and local governments. The government is therefore finalizing a public sector productivity and reform strategy to be launched in January 2026. This strategy will rationalize state institutions, reduce duplication, digitize operations, and improve service delivery standards. Through the National Skills Development Authority, we shall align tertiary and technical education with Ghana's industrial and service sector priorities. Young people must be trained for the job markets of today and tomorrow, not the job titles of the past. A new era of accountable economic governance. The dialogue also called for a reset in how we govern the economy, not just in terms of policies implemented, but also in terms of how we ensure transparency and accountability. To this end, I've directed that the Ministry of Finance and National Development Planning Commissions must issue biannual public reports on the implementation status of all significant recommendations made in the National Economic Dialogue Report. Furthermore, we'll institutionalize multi-stakeholder review of our medium-term development plans and strengthen parliamentary oversight over public spending through enhanced audits and disclosure mechanisms. And I think on this stage, I take Anchorage Mariamson's suggestion on board that we hold an annual review of the implementation of the dialogue.